He's getting faster on those. Good morning. Good to see you here this morning. Glad you could be here. Happy Mother's Day to all of our mothers that are here and for all those who get to celebrate their mothers. It's a good, exciting day. We're glad that today, as we talk about, or as we're already thinking about mothers, our topic for the lesson today is building up the next generation. So, I don't know if this is on or not, but our theme, our series this month is it's too fast. I went too far. Hang on, I'll go back. I've always got cute pictures of Parker, and I'll take a chance to show it. The theme for this month is the picture-perfect family, right? And that's in air quotes, quotation marks, because it's hard to imagine an actually picture-perfect family, right? You know your family and your situation far better than anybody else does. I know mine far better than anybody else does, other than people in my family. And we have a lot to get through, right? Some people love family reunions. It's typically grandma's. Some people dread going to family reunions because of, just having to see all the people that maybe you disagreed with growing up. But maybe it's exciting because you get to see the people that you love so much. So we all have these picture-perfect families. What I love about this graphic here, even though it's funny that it looks just like Keaton, Kyla, Brooklyn, and Boone, it doesn't really work for me and Ashley's family quite, hair color and stuff, or even number of kids yet. But social media has this idea, right, that it's always very polished, and I'm guilty of it. We all are. We post something on social media very differently than maybe the reality was. I don't know if you've ever, maybe even this morning for Mother's Day, you wanted to take a picture with your mom as you were leaving the house, some of you kids. We're going to post it like Happy Mother's Day. Maybe Easter, you think, okay, we'll take a picture. We got all our new dresses and new coat on or something, and want to take a nice picture. And then, you go back through the camera roll, and half of them, everybody's, disagreeing and like, oh, no, I need to go over here, and, oh, leave me alone. Don't touch my buttons. I got it. And then you post the one that's really perfect, right? And that's the picture-perfect family. So we get in our heads in this idea a lot of times that everybody else has got it all together because that's what we see of everybody else. Why don't I have it together? Why isn't my family together? And so what I love that Keaton really pointed out last week was that no matter your family situation, no matter your life, what's happened in the past, what's going to happen in the future, God can take that situation. He can take your family and He can redeem it for His purpose, no matter what. That's the overarching theme of this whole series, right? And because Keaton shared his, pictures of his kids, I thought it fitting to show one of mine. All smiles. This is when Parker didn't have any teeth. Just a little gummy, cute smile. And, we were taking pictures, and this was awesome. Took a bunch of these. She's smiling. She was so young. This is probably like one of the first times we captured a real smile on camera. It was awesome. And then not even 5 seconds later. But guess which one we show to most people, right? It's pretty easy to show them that one, but I bet you've never seen that one before. That is fun as a parent if you've been there. Parker didn't go through a long period of the spit-up phase, but it was certainly an adventure while it was happening. We see a lot of this, and we don't see a lot of this, right? So our lives are very different beneath the surface of social media or beneath the surface of small talk, even at church. And we want to be there to help each other. But today we're going to talk about what it's like to build up the next generation of the church, of the faith, and of our families, and why that's so important. Maybe you were raised what you would consider to be very well by your parents, right? You think back to I remember in college I had to write for a family, it was called Marriage and Family class that I had at Freed-Hardeman. I had to write a paper that was called the Family of Origin. So I had to think through my whole upbringing and write things down about the way that I was raised. And so maybe for you, as you're thinking about your family of origin, maybe you think about you were raised very well. You're very grateful for just about everything your parents did. Nothing went wrong. Others have a very different experience, and maybe it was difficult. But either way, regardless of what's happened in the past, the point this morning is that each one of us in this room have the opportunity to build up the next generation to either have a passion and a fervor for following God, or we can ignore that challenge and allow the next generation to grow up to not have that passion and that fervor for God. That's the challenge this morning. For each of us to take an active role in the building up of the next generation to be faithful children, disciples, and followers of God. So let's go to our text this morning in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Sorry, I'll take the spit up picture off the page. Turn to Deuteronomy chapter 6. As we frame this story this morning, the lesson is simple. I have 2 points, and we're coming from basically one passage this morning. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, this is God telling the Israelites, the whole assembly of Israel, all the people of Israel, what they are to do now that they've come out of Egypt, they've become God's chosen people through this promise. You've got the whole assembly of Israel here, right? You've got everybody who was an Israelite, everybody who was a slave in Egypt that have all come out, and now what's the charge? What's the command from God? Then he says in Deuteronomy 6, starting in verse 4, what Hayden read for us. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. And these words I command you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall talk of them while you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes, and you shall write them on the doorposts of your house. God's command here is 2 things, and this is the lesson this morning, 2 very simple points. God tells them here, the Israelites, to live their faith, right? That's the first part of this in verses 4 through 6. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. The second part is, then we have to teach that to the next generation, which is verses 7 through 9. To teach it diligently, to talk about it, to live it out. And that's the lesson this morning. It's very simple, but we know simple isn't easy, right? Just because we can put it into 2 points and stay in one passage doesn't mean that that's easy to live out, but the challenge is directly from God and directly for us this morning. There's a study by Lifeway Research that said that a significant portion of students, of kids, teenagers that stayed faithful through the college years had an average of 5 connections with people in their churches who modeled their faith that the kid could see. 5 people. Now that sounds like a very low number, but that doesn't include their parents. And so we think about anyone under the age of 18, even high school and under. We're trying to teach them and raise them to be faithful, to be followers of God in this world. Research shows that the critical component of that is having people in their church who models their faith and lives it out in a way that the child can see it and learn from it. Right? We look a lot of times in our own families and we think, and I'm glad if we've started at this point, we think that, even me as a parent is enough to give my kids an opportunity to grow and to learn. But what the study showed was that for every additional mentor, every additional person that took an interest in teaching the next generation for this kid, it exponentially grew their ability to be faithful and to stay faithful in the church. So the challenge is not just for parents of children today. This challenge is for everyone in this congregation to take an active role in helping build up the next generation. Right, we can start with our families all day long. I can start with Parker and our new baby coming in June. But I also have a very specific responsibility to go out of my way to help mentor and to raise up the next generation of all the other people that are in this room as well. How can we make sure that all of the kids get to at least 5 people who can mentor them and teach them? Are you one of those 5 people for any one of the next generation in this room? Can you think about that? Who are you doing that for, and how can you do that? The lesson is simple. We have to live it, and then we have to teach it. So if we go to Deuteronomy 6 again, we're going to read verses 4 and 6 one more time. To live our faith, this is how God says to do it. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and all your might. And these words that I command you today shall be on your heart. Right, if you go back to chapter 5, the chapter right before this, you see where Moses summoned all Israel, verse 1, and recounted the 10 commandments. He went back through and reminded them of the commandments that God had given them. And then God's command here is to stick to that, to love that, right? This isn't, again, we think about teaching the next generation. It's all about just information passing. Can we just teach a Bible class to them? Or can we just tell them something and tell them information? That's not how the next generation is going to learn and grow to be truly faithful. They're going to model it, right? I don't know if you've heard this before, but that's how young kids grow up and learn things. They model it after what they've seen. And so the same is for us spiritually. As we grow up from infants in Christ, to keep growing, we're going to do what we've seen modeled. Now, that's a little daunting, isn't it? Because we realize it doesn't matter how much we tell and teach and pass information to the next generation if we're not actually living it. Because why would they internalize it if they don't see it truly working in our lives? If we want any shot of our kids internalizing the faith that we want to see in them, we have to live it authentically first. What's the number one reason that you've heard people say they don't want to come to church? It's hypocrisy, right? You've heard that. I've heard that. And if that is true, if there is real hypocrisy, that's a very valid concern. That's not something to brush off and say, we shouldn't just, they need to learn to get over it. If there's hypocrisy, we have to fix that. And for kids, it's the same. For them to look up to their mentors, their role models, their parents, whoever that is, they have to be authentically living their faith first. Kids are smart, right? This next generation will 100% see through the facade if we put one on. If there's no true faith behind the words that they were told, then nothing matters. Here's a good test of that, I would say. For us, as we mentor and teach next generation, think about pivotal moments in your life. Maybe it was a difficult day that you had. Maybe a family member passed away. Maybe you lost your job. Or maybe it was an exciting day. Maybe you went to Carowinds and had a great fun day and you didn't think about anything else. Days like that, core memories. How did you go about them? Was God present at all in any of those days? When you're at your lowest, did you as a family turn to God and live out what you say? Or when things are going really well and you're excited, did you praise God as a family for that day and for His blessings? What's it like to live out real faith in those scenarios? Because again, as kids learn to model what they've seen, if they're looking up to us, they're going to do what they've seen. If in these weird scenarios in life, a strange day, a difficult day, a good day, when they have their own strange, difficult, or good day, they're going to do what they've seen. It's pivotal. It's important for us to make sure we model our faith truly and authentically in those days. 1 Timothy 1:5 is kind of probably the go-to passage for Mother's Day, right? Timothy says, or Paul says to Timothy, I'm reminded of your sincere faith, a faith that dwelt in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice now, and I'm sure it dwells in you as well. How did Timothy get to the point where he was? To be a minister in the church, to be young and to be faithful where he was. He had a grandmother who, according to Paul, through the Holy Spirit, had a sincere faith in the grandmother, and then a sincere faith that passed on to his mother, and now to him as well. That's how we have faithful children growing up to be the next generation. The next point is to teach that faith. Verses 7 through 9 say, "You shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates." Does your family have any really good stories? Maybe they start coming to mind as you start thinking about it. You have any good stories that like every Thanksgiving or every time you come together, just inevitably the good stories always pop up? Maybe you have some of those. Okay, for me, in my family, when we're together at Thanksgiving, every year I hear about that pass interference call at the Thanksgiving football game between my uncle and my grandpa, my great uncle and my grandpa, that my great uncle cannot let go of. And that was in like 1985. That was not like last year. This is like a lasting legend that they can't get rid of. It's a funny story. We tell of these things all the time. I think about my nanny going full samurai in her garden and decapitating a copperhead snake that was terrorizing her while she was gardening. And she was like 85 years old at the time. Legend has it she did it with her bare hands and a bar of soap, but that is unconfirmed. I think about my father-in-law's pranks that he pulled on his principal. I've heard some of those before. I don't know if I can share all of those. But there's some silly things that we get together and talk about because they're funny and they're a core part of our memory. All of these stories are the legacy that shapes my family. Like it or not, the things that come down from my grandparents to my parents to me and from Ashley's grandparents to her parents to her, that's the legacy that shapes our family. And the stories we tell shape who we are. You know, I think my generation's probably gotten a pretty bad rap for railing against tradition. I say a bad rap, but it might be fair to say that. To rail against tradition and try to tear them down. But younger people, hear me when I say this. Traditions are not all pointless. Traditions are pointless when they have no meaning behind them. The tradition of our faith is not pointless because the meaning behind it is the God that brought us out of slavery and into the life of his promises. The tradition of our faith is not pointless. Later on in Deuteronomy 6, starting verse 20, he says, "When your son comes up to ask you, hey, what's the meaning of all this? Why do we do this? Why do we spend all of our time in the tabernacle, the temple? Why do we do these things? What does God say to tell them?" Remind the kids that you were slaves in Egypt. You had nothing. You were powerless except for the God that used his mighty hand to bring you out. Man, what did the stories sound like for those families that had just come out of Egypt? Hopefully, if they were truly doing this command here, maybe they sat around and the parents told the kids, the next generation, about the pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. Or maybe they told them all about the waters of the Red Sea that parted for them and they walked on dry land. This next generation that had not seen that had to hear that from their parents and from the previous generation to know what God had done for them and to know how much God cared to save them. Do we sit around and talk about what God's done for us? In your family, do you sit around and recount history of your life and the things you've been through? And do you talk about how God was present and real and active in those times? That's so important. Do we start our conversations and saturate them with things like God was with us during that time? Or God has blessed us so much? Those are very important things to say and to be reminded of, that if we let them slip, then how will the next generation know how God actively worked in our lives? And how can they expect that to be seen in their own? The lesson I'm learning with Parker in the last couple of months has been, it's very easy when she asks a question to just kind of brush it off, right? I told you so. Or maybe to just give a quick answer that gets her off my back, right? She'll ask a lot of questions and keep going. So maybe she asks, hey, what is that? And points to a songbook. In that moment, I'm faced with the opportunity to either say, oh, it's just a book, and just go about my day. Or I could say something like, that's a book full of songs that we sing to God because of how much we love him. How much more powerful can our language be if we talk like that to the next generation? To frame everything that they see and know, to know that God is present in all of it. And God matters to us, and that he should to them. You know, a fifth grader in Bible class may ask, why did God make giraffes? That's a great question. That's a really weird shaped animal. So maybe we could say, well, I don't know, because God thought it was funny. Which, you know, funny answers to fifth graders are hilarious sometimes, and they'll do it back. Or we could say something like, because God chose to paint his beauty and his power into everything that we see around us, because he loves us. How much more can the language of how we teach and talk to the next generation, how much more does that shape their understanding and their view of God and his beauty and his love for us? How can we make our conversations bloom with good biblical teaching that is a normal and intentional part of our daily lives? It's hard and it takes practice, but it's worth doing. And that's what God is telling them to do, right? He doesn't say, hey, just sit down and just have a lecture and tell your kid at one time, just teach them all these things. He says, teach them diligently to your children, while you're talking with them, while you sit in the house, while you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them on your hands and between your eyes. Every part of our life has to be saturated in some sense with teaching the next generation about who God truly is. And it means so much more coming from someone that they know is actively living it. What about the time that life got really scary for you? Did we discuss as a family how we could respond as Christians? When somebody at church, one of the younger generation, comes up and asks you a question about what you did in that time, do you saturate that conversation with, because God has been good to me? That's how we can teach the next generation. Whatever point at your life or in your family that you're at, God can take your family and the situation, whether it's good, bad, messed up, whatever it is, and he can redeem it for his purpose. Every person in this room has the opportunity, like we said earlier, to help build up the next generation. It's not just for parents. Kids need 5 mentors, 5 people. And the more that they have, the greater their chance of staying faithful grows. Find a way that you can pour into the next generation to teach them in these ways. Teach them about how God has lived and actively worked in your life. So Keaton is a nerd, and I can say that because he's not here. But he'll watch this and he'll get on to me later. He was telling me about this thing the other day from Star Trek. Because he loves Star Trek. I do too, but he's more of a nerd than me, I can say that. This thing called Kobayashi Maru. And this was a test in the Star Trek universe where they would give cadets this test that was a lose-lose situation. There was no chance that they could have won or impressed their officers at all. This was a lose-lose situation. And they were trying to see how the cadets would respond in the worst kind of scenario. Family kind of seems like a lose-lose scenario for some of us. Sometimes it can be hard. Life is difficult, we're busy. But the question is, how are we going to respond? Going from where we're at now, how can we build up and continue adding to the faithfulness of our generation to the next? That's the question. Today's Mother's Day. We're thankful for all of our mothers. We're thankful for the chance that we get to spend recognizing them for the way that they have built us up. And I hope that you will make sure to tell your mother that and to make sure that that's important to you. This morning, if you have any requests or any need or for prayers or help in order to help build up the next generation, whether it's your kids or you just need strength or guidance to do that for someone else, we'd love to offer that help and to offer that guidance if you'll come forward now as we stand and sing.